Welcome to the Incubator's talk. I'm tired. How to create a sense of belonging for women and people of color in the workplace. On our panel, well, I don't call it a panel. It's a conversation amongst my sister friends, as one of my teammates called it. Just about, not that it's always about me, but this conversation does revolve around my experience over the last 2 years as a mom in the workplace and the intersectionality of being a woman and a woman of color in the workplace. And the women on the talk today have been pretty integral in that journey. And so I thought that they would be the best folks to talk to during this conversation. So my name is Alexis Willis. I am the Director of Small Business and Entrepreneurship for the Chattanooga Chamber. I run the Incubator, which is the gold mine at the corner of Manufacturers and Cherokee, where there's over 50 founders in the building toiling away right now, daily. So today's conversation will have Victoria Baltz, who is on my team over at the Incubator, Mia Littlejohn, and with Proof Bar and Incubator, and she's a mama and a wife. And then we have Tiffany Robinson, who is at Lamppost Properties. Did I get it right? Second Story. I should say Second Story, right?
I'm the CEO of Lamppost Properties, and Second Story is a portfolio company.
Do you see how she leaned in for that? Yes, she's so much. She's got so much going on. She's also a mama and a wife. So they've got a lot going on, a lot on their plate. So it's going to make the conversation dynamic, I already know. All right. So if you want to, you can go ahead and introduce yourselves. I can talk about you all day long, but Victoria, do you want to tell us what you do and your, how you do?
Yeah, so I'm Victoria Baltz. I am the resource coordinator at the Incubator. I work for Alexis and our small team that does amazing work over there, working with some of the best entrepreneurs in Chattanooga. I help Alexis with the programming and do all of the marketing and help out with all of the events. So and help out with other stuff too.
Like all the things. Yeah. I don't know where I would be without Victoria, literally, in this role. Mia?
My name is Mia Littlejohn. Like Alexis said, I work with Proof Bar and Incubator. We are a collaborative community for food and beverage professionals, and we also have a cocktail bar and several restaurants in residency along with the commercial kitchen. We run a variety of programs really just designed to help food and beverage professionals grow, scale, and accelerate their business development.
And I'm Tiffany Robinson. I'm the CEO of Lamppost Properties, and we have portfolio companies that I also run and oversee, Second Story Real Estate Management, as well as the Tamara Building brand. And we recently launched a brand new company called Easy Storage Solutions. Over here doing a lot of real estate development and real estate asset management.
All the things. Tiffany is who I want to be when I grow up. All the things. She does all the things. All right. So I want to give a little bit of background of how I pulled this group together. So I'm a single mom of 2 kids. My youngest found out she was on her way. I was 5 weeks into my new role as director. And she decided to make her debut 12 weeks early. So she spent 80 days in the NICU. When she got out, it was around flu season. And so the nurses strongly encouraged me to keep her close by. So we didn't put her in daycare. So I did the next best thing. I had to go back to work. So I literally strapped her to my chest and went to work. The chamber hosted a baby shower for me and had gave me lots of baby stuff, including a pack and play, which stayed next to my desk. And when I needed her to take a nap, I laid her down next to the desk, and that's where she stayed for the full work day. And then I think I saw Bridget on here. She at the time had an office in our building, And she would come if she heard the baby whine a little bit and just rock her back to sleep. And so I talked a little bit before we jumped on the call about how Victoria, I don't even know if Victoria even liked kids, but she very quickly got used to having a baby around. And I would, if I had to take a meeting in the boardroom, I'd be like, listen out for the baby. And she learned where the binky was. I did not make her change any diapers. I wasn't going to let her do that, but she did learn how to give the baby a diaper. So Victoria, to kind of jump off the call, can you talk about what it was like? As you were pretty new to the job, I think maybe even a month or two in, and it was quite the whirlwind. You had to learn your gig, and then, your boss was a new mom again. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so I started in November of that year, and I think you had just come back to the office like 2 weeks prior. So when I came in, our team is really small, so it's Alexis, me, and Bill as far as the office management. And so coming in, trying to learn all of those ropes was a lot. And then having this boss that I think the first week I was there, you didn't talk to me except for say hello, because you were like, I'm just going to give her space, let her settle in, which I really appreciated. And then you came in with all of your ideas and everything. But we would have meetings and you would have the baby strapped to your chest or on your lap. It was, definitely different. This is my first official job out of college. So this is, putting on my big girl pants, and here's my very unconventional job where I would have to put the binky in, or if Alexis had to run to the restroom or wherever it may be, I, improvised. And yeah, I was not, I've never been very good with kids. So it was definitely an interesting thing for myself. But I love Aziza, and I wish that she was, if we were back in the office, to be able to see her more often. But it was interesting, but it's just part of the job. I felt like it was natural.
Mm-hmm. So supporting mom bosses is a interesting animal, it sounds like you're saying. It was kind of a whirlwind. It was like a couple weeks. I had just been back and you started, and it was a lot, and we took on a lot together. Tiffany, you've got 3 boys and managing a lot of, we heard a little bit about what you're managing, in your role as CEO. How do you manage it as a CEO? Like what supports have you put in either in the workplace or at home? What infrastructure do you have in place to support you, in such a huge leadership role?
Yeah, I think that community is what we're talking about here today, talking about like leaning on those that we're closest to be those support systems. And I've been really lucky that I have a really great community around me. I also have a really great mother-in-law. I feel like I owe her like all the credit in the world. But I also have a really great husband who really does share like 50-50 in those responsibilities. And I think that it is really hard to find a strong partner in that way. I don't have a partner in my business. And, I think that, looking back, some days I wish that I did, but I am really lucky that I have a really strong partner at home. But we also like lean on as many people within our community as we can. So whether it's family members or friends to help us out with our kids. I'm not a helicopter mom, that's for sure, because there's no way that I could, follow my kids around the backyard mm-hmm. while also maybe like needing to do all the other things that I need to do during a day or after hours. And so, I guess I don't think it's easy at all. Like, I don't think it's easy to be a mom and also, or a working mom, whether you're running a company or not. Like, I don't think it's easy. I think that you do have to be really intentional, though, about finding ways to create space for yourself, whatever it may be. I only get like 45 minutes by myself a day, like period, even on the weekends. And that's typically when I'm working out. So because I have 25 employees and I am very I'm not at a place where I can just be a CEO that operates like at a really high level and just stay out of all the operations. I'm really involved in the operations. And there are plenty of days where I sit, in meetings back to back to back, where I'm with people all day long. I don't, it's like I have to also fight for that time, even within my schedule at work, to be able to like sit in front of my computer and do whatever I need to do, or to like do research or to read or work on something, because I do spend most of my time with other human beings. And so then whenever I get home, like I'm with my other little humans for the rest of the day and, until they go to bed. So my only alone time is probably for about 45 minutes in the morning when I get to work out. And if I don't find that time to make that happen, then that's probably it for me. So I think really carving out that space is really important.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that 45 minutes. And you're thinking there's 24 hours in a day, and then only 45 minutes, we have to like fight for that. No wonder, we end up like, some people ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, I'm tired. Like,
I'm tired, yeah. Especially with little kids, it's really hard. Like, it's so easy to be so tired. But I have also this year alone, like finally this year, like finally started like prioritizing sleep. I don't get 8 hours of sleep. I probably get 7 hours of sleep, but 7 hours is good for me. So
yeah.
I try really hard to prioritize it. But like on Sunday, one of my kids interrupted my workout, and I just borderline yelled at him and said, like, go inside, because this is it for me.
This is my time. Can I please? Yeah. Mia, do you have anything to add about how to support mothers in the workplace? I mean, you have a little different dynamic over at the INCubator, over at Proof. So, like, what does that look like?
We have a lot of, one of the great things about what we do at Proof is that there's some flexibility, and we have an awesome staff who sort of keeps everything running in terms of the bar and restaurant. Mm-hmm. Actually, for those of you who don't know this, Tiffany's husband, who's her life partner, is my business partner at Proof. And so he's been awesome because we do end up finding ways to divide and conquer and create flexibility for each other where we need it. My husband and I both manage our own small businesses. And so early on, when our kids are little enough that they were home with us from the middle of March through, well, they're still home with us now. So we started trying to figure out a way to sort of split shift the time that we needed to be available to the kids and then the time that we could focus on work. One of the funny things that came out of that was one day I got home and my 3-year-old had drunk a whole bottle of maple syrup, and that kind of became our pandemic mantra, which was don't drink the syrup. Kind of like if you could just get through the day without drinking a whole bottle of syrup, you were winning. I think, with our team, just really finding ways to check in on your staff, whatever they might be experiencing and going through, has been really crucial for us. The restaurant industry experienced a lot of uncertainty from the very beginning around what it was going to look like to safely operate, how, hospitality in the service industry was changing. And then also, we were deemed essential workers. So we actually didn't take any real breaks initially when everything sort of started changing. We just shut down our operations as they would have existed and shifted focus and did some other things during the time from the middle of March through the end of May. And, just really trying to figure out ways to communicate clearly with our team about how much we were invested in their success and also in their, mental health. I think creating that space and letting them know that they could always check in with us and ask for flexibility, and being vulnerable with them about how challenging this season was for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was an article that was shared with me this morning about how many women or mothers are leaving the workforce right now or have left since the pandemic started. I mean, the hundreds of thousands. Tiffany, I want to direct this question towards you, as you have a pretty solid number of women on your staff. Have you had conversations with them? I'm not sure how many are mothers, but but how to support them if they're thinking about, transitioning back into the home. The article talked about setting us back like 40 years, and the women will be back back at home while the men are the breadwinners. Did you just drop it in the chat, Victoria? Victoria just dropped the article in the chat with all the stats and stuff in it. But just like, are you thinking about that as you think about retaining talent in your company and how to support the working mothers? Flexibility is a good one. I love that Mia brought that word into the conversation, but any insight you can give us on how you're thinking about that dilemma?
Yeah, I haven't seen the article, but I did listen to a NPR episode like months ago, like as COVID was, in its finest moment. And there was an economist that had shared the same stat that the number of jobs being lost will set back the progress that we've made with getting women into the workforce. At the time, I think it was like the stat was like by 20 years. So it's quite startling. So, and I remember listening to that podcast or that episode of NPR and just being so enraged by this damn thing. Sure, we've all experienced rage at some point this year. Yeah. And so, and at that time too, so many of us were trying to understand like what to do with childcare and, school situations. And so really over the summer, I mean, we did make it, very flexible. I mean, it still is very flexible for parents within the workplace. I mean, I think definitely like way more forgiving and more open-minded about that flexibility than what we were prior to everything happening with COVID. We even set up, basically like hired someone to watch all of our kids this summer if each parent needed that. So, and we had explored like putting, like a childcare center in one of our buildings and what that would look like. It felt to me like this summer, it was like a tipping point. It was like I either figure out how to help my working parents or I need to just plan to not have, to be honest with you, like any productivity this year. And to be honest with you, like not having productivity isn't an option because then whenever there's no productivity, then there's no jobs.
There's no profit.
So, yeah, I mean, it's math. So, this summer, I mean, I spent a lot of time really thinking through like how to create resources for the parents on our team. And so flexibility was the number one, thing to just keep as an ongoing option, right? It's just an open door for flexibility. We hired someone to be a childcare provider like for the summer. We ended up doing it at my house, and if anybody needed it, they just took their kids to my house and boom, the kids could run around together and be in the backyard. And then just continuing those conversations on a regular basis of like, how are you doing this week? What do you need? How's it going with, the fact that like, we don't know what's going to happen come August. And because then once we kind of figured out the summer situation, it was what happens whenever August hits and if none of us have school for our children, like what does that look like? So it was a very open conversation that I kept having with my employees that are parents, which are a majority of female employees. So, I mean, I just think having like the conversation, being really conscious of it and aware, but like sometimes I felt like I was the one that needed this resource the most, because I have 3 children and am not escaping the situation in any way just because I'm CEO. And so sometimes I felt like maybe I was the one actually like dragging behind. Yeah. I don't know if that's really a thing in 2020, but, I felt like, well, I probably need this resource more than anybody else, but then it would turn out that like everybody needed it. So, so there's also a lot of like opportunity to really like relate to each other and just in some ways like team building, like building through a crisis together, and especially as parents, and then kind of building that community together.
Yeah, that's a good word. I think my hope is that, well, let me back up. When I read the article, I was like, why does it have to be that we are going backwards? Why do we have to leave? Why can't we figure out, again, going back to this infrastructure in workplaces and at home to support women's, continuing in their careers. And so I don't quite have the solution yet. I'm hanging in there myself, but it's a big, big, big conversation. And I like when Mia in one of our other talks talked about a mental health break for her team, the entire team, including herself, because what I hear both you and Tiffany and Mia talking about is taking care of themselves so that they can take care of their team. Was a mental health break at the beginning of the pandemic for everyone to just kind of pause and just be like, just assess where they are and take a break. Mia, you want to talk about what that looked like and how you...
Sure. Yeah, so we ended up actually at the end of May when the protests started here in Chattanooga was when our team really sort of experienced a lot of, I think, just anxiety and also a desire to kind of balance for themselves what their priorities were. And so we're located right down on MLK, close to downtown and close to where all the protests were going on. So for the first week, we were plugged into what they were doing. We were distributing water and hand sanitizer. But our team was working really hard to keep everything running at the restaurant. And we realized that they were sort of, I mean, nobody was really coming downtown to eat, and they were working really hard to keep everything going. And we could just tell that it may be a good time to let them have some time off to use their voices however they wanted, and also just to find a mental health break. And so we ended up taking 2 weeks off at the beginning of June and doing some team building activities and making sure we checked in with everybody. And it was really great because by the time we came back, we were able to launch 2 new restaurants along with, you know, an expanded outdoor patio. And so that kind of created some excitement around coming back to work, and also it gave our team just a little bit of extra energy. I mean, I think one of the challenges for entrepreneurs, and this is true, I think, wherever you are in your organization, you're usually, it's hard to know how to take a pause. It's hard to give yourself that permission. Mm-hmm. And if you can figure out a way to work with your team and your customers that allows you to just take a deep breath and take a step back, that can be really healing and helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. Victoria, do you have anything to add? No, you're not a mom yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a mom, so I don't have as much pressure. I've actually really been enjoying this work from home, escape from not having to do social outings, awkward family reunions, whatever it may be. So I don't have a touch point on that. I will say earlier when you mentioned the self-care portion and how important that is, and working for you and understanding like how disruptive and, you know, just, I mean, it was a confusing time because you had just like bought a house and had all this, you know, the kids were at home and all, and like, it was just crazy. And I would talk to you and you just seemed really stressed out. And then I was just trying to like, you know, we got to keep going. And I really wish that as a nation, as a city or whatever it is, that during that time that we switched from, hey, we're in the office every day to now we're working at home, you have to fight for toilet paper and chicken. And I wish that we had, as a community, just said, okay, we don't have to have that board report ready next Monday. Like, let's take a break. Let's take care of ourselves. Which I know that the chamber did push, like, you do not have to sit at your computer for 8 hours a day. We do not expect that. And while they were clear about that, I still think that we had all of this pressure to perform when we really shouldn't have.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember a moment you and I had a conversation where it was just a check-in. And, you know, I was just like, hey, how's it going? And you were very honest with me and said, you know, I'm having a hard time staying motivated. And, you know, and when I probed a little bit more, you know, the feedback that you gave me was like, hey, I see that, you know, you're distracted. It doesn't feel like you're as present. And so it's hard for me to get engaged around the work that we're doing, although it's important. And I know everyone's fatigued. It's just like, you know, so it, as the leader, it took a second. I mean, feedback is always good, whether it's hard to hear or not. It was hard to hear, but then I realized, that I needed to be intentional about my own self-care if I was going to lead my team in a strong way, and then also making sure, again, because I wouldn't have known that had I not checked in with you. So being more intentional about checking in with the entire team. And I think I talked to at least one of you all at least once a day or twice, depending on what's going on. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, Mia, you talked about the protests and things going on. So I want to shift from a COVID climate to some of the other things that are happening in our climate, which are pretty volatile, and have reached, again, to use the word like tipping point that Tiffany used, when George Floyd was killed. It was right around the time that the video of Ahmaud Arbery was released. We had heard about Breonna Taylor. It just seemed like within a few days' time that we had heard a lot of and saw a lot of trauma. And so it was difficult as a woman of color to show up, to just be present and show up, because it was extremely traumatic. So I want to dig into a little bit of how you showed up for people, and it doesn't have to be around in the workplace, but how did that, I know how the trauma impacted me, but how did it impact you seeing some of those things just going over and over, loop after loop, in social media, on the news, and also like some of your friends? Like, how did you support the people around you in that season? What did it look like? Either one of y'all could take it.
I think I remember reaching out to you as well, Alexis, but I'm like very aware that I'm a white woman. So I try to be like really open and honest and aware of that. I think initially, like probably a lot of people, I felt a lot of confusion and a lot of grief, a lot of what is going on, but I tried really hard to use, and I'm still doing it, but really have tried to use this time to really ask a lot of questions to help myself understand what I don't understand. I'm also like checking in a lot with my friends, that are a lot of my friends that are of color, but also I'm talking to a lot of my friends that are white too. I think that we have to have these conversations, and we can't be afraid of them. We have to be very vulnerable about them. And, we need to be asking ourselves, what should we be doing to move this conversation forward? Like, what privilege do I have that I can use in a way to make this situation hopefully better for the community, for the country, for my children, for the world, but I also think like we also have to really understand the position that we're also in these situations too. Like, I care a whole lot more about like hearing what you have to say, Alexis, about it than I do what my own feelings are about the situation, because I want to better understand like what you're seeing and what you're feeling and how, what is it like? So I'd like to think that I've spent a lot of this time like trying to ask questions and listen and just become way more informed, become a better human. But that can't be the only thing that we do. We have to figure out how we really take care of these problems and really make sure that these actions don't continue to happen. It's a really big, heavy problem to try to understand.
It is, and there's lots and lots of layers, and I think ways to approach it. And I'll say I'm pretty proud of the way the chamber. I spoke up in in one of our staff meetings, and this basically said, like all this stuff is happening. I am not okay, and there are 4 people of color on our team. Like, we want to hear from y'all, like what's going on. And I did, where's Sybil? I see Sybil's on here. Sybil reached out to me. But we ended up in 7 weeks of racial equity training. And it was really powerful because one of the guys on the sales team, he did reach out to me after one of the sessions and said, I'm learning things that I had no idea about. And he's like, I'm going to continue to learn. And the impact of that is that now he has a new lens when he's out in the sales field. He has a new lens to approach that, right? And I think it creates more empathy, and he probably will, I'm hoping that it makes him a little bit more bold to have conversations while he's out in the field, right, with new information. I see Lindsay also has been Lindsay and Steve are also on the chamber team, and they took part in that, in those trainings. And I think it was really helpful and a bold move for the chamber to say, you know what, we're going to go through this training and listen to some hard stuff, but also create what's called a common language around what's happening. So, so Mia, you guys were in the thick of it. How did you all play a part in some of the protests or the conversations that were literally happening on the street in front of your space?
I think, one of the things that we really just tried to do was create some space and some tangible ways that we could empower our team to be a part of the conversations and give them tools to actively listen to and hear what people on the street needed. And that's how we ended up doing water and hand sanitizer and providing ice and different things along the way. And then also just, I think the concept of giving them the ability to go to the protests and encouraging them to use their own voices. And then really just checking in personally with each of our staff members. And, that extends beyond just like staff to checking in with people that we know in communities around the country and trying to figure out, what they're feeling and seeing and hearing and how to create tangible ways to listen and learn and also support in those different contexts. So, I have a lot of friends and family that live around the country, and I think everybody's experience was connected but different. The conversations that were happening with my friends in New York and my friends in Chicago and my friends in LA were really kind of a different experience than the ones here, which in some ways were more accessible because, Chattanooga is a pretty mid-sized city, and a lot of us know people who are in positions of power, and then we, may also know people who are kind of leading the charge of the protests. And one thing I found really important was just reaching out across, I think there was something incredibly valuable to reach across generational lines and hear what, Chattanooga has a long history of people who have stood up for social justice issues over years and generations, and trying to listen to them and learn from them, and also to hear kind of what the younger generation is looking for. I think for me, at least, it's been really helpful to just hear from multiple generations.
Mm-hmm. Victoria, you have anything to add? We have lots of conversations in the office.
Well, not really anything too much to add. I think I am glad that the chamber did have those difficult conversations, and I think you and I have had tough conversations, and you've given me great book recommendations. I listened to the 1619 podcast. I'm going to plug that because that I think everyone needs to listen to as far as education and just understanding. And I don't know, the word patience just keeps coming to mind as far as like patience and understanding. I don't really have too much. I'm here for the ride.
Well, I will say that I feel like that you're part of a generation that is even more vocal than mine and Mia and Tiffany's. That's taken up, they're not taking no for an answer, or no, that's just the way it's always been, I feel like. And so I will say that my conversations with you it's been neat to hear or see your passion around some of this stuff and be like, no, that's BS. It shouldn't be like that. Like, why can't it be because you're qualified? Or why can't we support moms better? Or why are they leaving after that article? Why are they?
That article was really hard to read. And then especially with people of color, I think I told you this when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about with this, is that so I work the front desk of the incubator. And so I see people, all different kinds of people, old, young, different colors come in. And there's just, I don't know, like this humblingness that comes when there's people of color that come in. They're nervous, they're shaky, they don't know how exactly, they don't know what to say, what help that they need. See, I can't say what I need help either. And so it's just, I wish that people were just a little bit more comfortable. And that's the kind of conversations that I want to have, is to where people, anyone, no matter who they are, should be and are welcome into the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Creating a sense of belonging. So so we can pull it out to a higher level now. Is how do we do that? Do you want to start the conversation? Do you have any ideas?
I don't know. That's why I wanted to have this. I'm going to say I don't know. I wish I had the answers. I just have a lot of questions.
Well, based on your experience at the incubator, do you see some opportunities for the ecosystem to be more belonging, create more belonging?
I wish that we were able to have a lot more outreach. I feel like I hate being trapped behind my desk. I wish that I could be more present at events and to be able to advocate that, like, it is possible. I know that a lot of people feel like they have to get a degree before they can start a business, and that is not true. I actually have a degree in business management. It's fine. Like, I can start a business without it. And so I want people to understand that it's way more accessible than you think. And I don't know exactly how but more advocacy work.
So Mia, at Proof, I feel like Proof is creating accessibility with the concept, because typically service and food, that industry is, there are a lot of people of color in that industry, but they don't necessarily have the resources to just go open a brick and mortar. And so find out how do they even, how do they refine their product? But you have programming in place to help with that. And I think that's a part of the solution to creating belonging, is creating access to some of this knowledge that felt kind of far away for some communities,
Yeah, one thing that we've done really intentionally from the beginning is just center our conversations around sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and try to make that part of how we implement everything from our hiring to our recruitment, and to the people that we come alongside. I think a lot of times access to funding and support doesn't feel accessible to a lot of communities, especially communities of color. And we have really just found that there's a ton of people who are looking for those support systems and opportunities. And if you seek them out and develop authentic relationships with them, you can really help accelerate their work. And we've got just some wonderful people who are part of our space and part of our programs. But I think it's helped a lot to not have that be like a sidebar conversation, but to have it be something that's really central to everything that we do. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I would just say also it's fantastic and also really kind of humbling to take a space on a place in Chattanooga like MLK, where there's this incredibly rich tradition of Black culture, And
Yeah.
so we've done a lot of outreach, not just to other businesses, but to people who have been a part of that community for a long time. And we've been able to make connections so that the community knows that we're not looking to, change things. We're looking to celebrate their community and their history and, kind of be a part of restoring a lot of that cultural status to that street.
Mm-hmm. And Tiffany, you and I have been in the ecosystem for a long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've always been an advocate for, one, creating the sense of belonging and creating inclusive and diverse spaces. Like it always seems like it's been at your core in everything that you've done, especially supporting women well.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It is. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like that's a big part of who I am. And, so I'm a founding member of the Jump Fund, which is a female-led angel fund, and we invest in female-led companies. And we, over the last 8 years, have raised 2 funds. We have about $10 million in investment under management, and have deployed that money over the last 8 years to solely female-led companies. And, it's been, I think that, I've poured a lot of time and energy into that. And I think that when it comes to how do we create a more like truly inclusive ecosystem, to me, like the same thing just needs to be done for, people of color. We need to create a fund. We need to create more intentionality around how do we bring people of color into the ecosystem and, really create that sense of belonging. But I don't think that we've actually fully reached where we need to reach with women either. I mean, I think, I'm proud of the work that we've done, like with the Jump Fund, but, there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to bringing women in the fold, just period, more women. But then obviously we need more women of color too in this space. So I think that if Chattanooga would make it its goal to really build an ecosystem that's truly inclusive, it could be really dynamic and just really awesome. I do think that the work that Mia is doing over at Proof is like a really good example of how intentionality is created and how we like become really laser focused on that. It certainly helps that the food and beverage industry, I think, absolutely leans to minorities, which is great. So, elevating that industry alone should really help us kind of reach that, inclusivity goal. But, how do we help the entrepreneurs that are, minority entrepreneurs that already have a business in place, but they really need that funding or that driver, that mentor, that coach to help them take it to the next level. And I see that across the board in every industry. So I wish that Chattanooga would have a resource for, really driving those businesses to the next level. And I think that in some ways that could become collab, but they've been really focused on starting companies. I don't feel like we've really figured out how to create that resource that helps you go from start to the next level and the next level, because it's not start to exit at all. There's a whole bunch of time in between.
Whole lot. Yeah, a whole lot of squigglies. Yeah.
Lots, yeah. So there's a whole lot of growth mode. It's like, once you get into growth mode, you're really in growth mode for a long time, until you basically say like, I don't want to grow anymore. So I think the possibilities of really helping businesses on the growth mode side is endless right now, but we do not laser in those opportunities or that resource for minority owned businesses.
There has been some conversations about supporting, communities of color a little bit better, entrepreneurs of color a little bit better. But I wonder if the definition of that support needs to be tweaked a little bit. And I've talked a little bit about this with Victoria about, we have a guy that sells fish sandwiches, and like, it's great if we hire him to cater our executive board meeting, like buying fish plates is one thing, but it's another thing to invest in a consultant or whatever kind of support he needs to get the infrastructure, I keep going back to that word, inside his business to a point where he can, that back end is smooth and running as efficiently as it can be. And then maybe he wants to get ready to franchise it, right? And so now he's building wealth for himself and his family. And I feel like, if we could just move past just, I don't know, it's this window, it's this unique window of support that I feel like that businesses need across the board, but especially in communities of color, because they don't have the rich uncles. I see Marco's on the call. Marco and I have talked about this several times on what that might look like. So I think, let's see, launch. Oh, I see the chat going, talking about launch. Yes, launch is a big resource. Marco gave me a thumbs up. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. We have a few minutes before we close out the call. Do we have any questions or feedback? Mama Crunk, is that you, Claire? You, Mama Crunk? No? Okay.
No, but now I'm hungry for a pie.
Anna, I did see your note about your pre-revenue, right? Is that what you said in your, okay. And so you had to stay home and do the homeschool thing while your husband stayed in the workforce. Yeah.
Yeah. The upside of that is my children are now extremely independent, and they fix all their own food and do their own laundry and manage their own schoolwork now. So they've turned into little mini adults.
Okay, so you might have a business teaching us how you do that, because we don't know.
Hey, it's fly or die around here right now, so.
Anyone else have any questions or feedback?
Hey, Alexa.
Hey.
I have some shared experiences. I ran my business for 20 years out of my own home while I was raising kids. And then when they graduated, I started a big business and grew it up to about 120 employees. But I loved running my business from my home because I basically told my clients, listen, I take off July and August, or June and July, and that's my downtime. So let's get all of the work done, during the school year while we have some availability. But, I think that we as women feel like we've got to work 24/7 and we've got to work 12 months a year. And there's a lot of businesses that have some flexibility. If you're an interior designer or, whatever it looks like, don't forget that there's some gifts that you as a business owner have control over. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share that shared experience because, and then when my kids got a little bit older, they learned what it looked like to be an entrepreneur. They were helping me with parts of my business. And so it was a great teachable moment for them. They're both, understand that, that you have to work to make money, because they helped me work, hours in my business. And so there's some beautiful things as being a female business owner that shouldn't be overlooked. So I just wanted to share that. And then the other part is I was fortunate enough to get a job at the SBDC, the TSBDC, about 4 months ago, which I absolutely adore. We don't have access to advertising for ourselves. We are not allowed to go out there and spend any money marketing. So it's just kind of word of mouth how people come to us. But our services are free, and I'm helping people every day with how do you do financial forecasting? How do you make a business plan? How do you start from the ground up and bootleg your own business and build it organically? And you don't have to have a lot of money to start a business all the time. So what does that look like? So I just want to say there's resources at no charge out there for anybody that wants to come to us. And we're here to support the community and the diversity. The thing that blows me away with the 40-some people that I'm working with right now, the diversity of ideas in this community is phenomenal. It is so exciting to see how creative people are in the businesses. So I'm super encouraged with where we are. I do agree 100% that I do believe that there's a lot of communities out there that don't realize who's available to help them. I feel like there's a lot of communities out there that people say, oh, you'll never make it, why are you even trying it? And I think that's the biggest roadblock, is that they don't have cheerleaders out there saying, yes, you can, and we're going to walk with you. We're going to take away the fear. We're going to take away the unknowns. We're going to help you be smart, and you don't have to do this alone. And so anyway, that like with what Mia's doing and Tiffany with her jump, that's phenomenal. But anyway, we can support the community to take the fear and the unknowns out of it. It's going to really help the successful as a whole, help the community be successful as a whole. So I just wanted to chime in. I love what y'all are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Any other feedback? And thank you. You might need to teach a session on how to build a business.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it takes a lot more planning. We're on the fly over here too, like Claire said.
Hey, it's Shanice. I love what you said, Rebecca, especially that last part about fear. I'm still in a full-time job, also have a small business in retail. That is one sector I really do not hear about here in Chattanooga. It's usually, restaurant, tech, other things of that nature, which is all great. But I really don't hear too much about retail, finding mentors in the retail space. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to find those mentors and build those relationships?
Rebecca, do you all have, I know at the INCubator, we don't, so I don't want to say we support, we don't have any retailers in the building. So it's not a resource. We're not a resource for that, unfortunately. But do you all have classes specific to retail, e-commerce?
We do. We have a lot of, we're connected across the United States. We have a lot of resources. And where we're seeing how do you, everybody's ever using the word pivot, but how do you switch to e-commerce during these times? What are some different avenues? Especially how do you use social media? How are you doing your marketing plan? How are you doing boosting? We've got classes on that. We do have resources to connect people with. And so those are conversations that we have with people all the time on how do you, today's world is not what it was 9 months ago, especially in the retail. But it's, as you said, I think youth, because I heard you talking earlier, with the work you're doing. So you've learned how to grow some, but then how do you take that to the next level? Is a lot of it is marketing. A lot of it is Facebook posts. Who's your market? Who's your target market? And that's what we work with people on, is defining your target market so that you're not wasting your marketing dollars on everybody, because not everybody is your client or your customer. So I'd be glad to have that conversation with you if you want.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you drop your email?
Sure.
So we are at 2:53. Ladies, do you have any parting supportive words for our call today? If there's a woman right now that comes to you and says, I'm tired, what would you say to her?
Take a nap in your car. I'm just kidding.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Me too. I guess what I would probably say, but I'm also an optimist, is that it's okay. It's going to be worth it. Just keep pushing through. I think that all good things make us tired. Well, all good things except COVID, but anything that's worth fighting for, you're going to be tired from. So, and I guess if you're questioning, if maybe your mental response is I don't think it's worth it, then maybe you need to ask yourself, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So, and maybe really evaluate why are you tired?
Yeah. Good word. Mia?
I would just say, one of the things that we know is important for our kids is having a schedule and leaning into rituals that are going to give you energy and focus. And so, I schedule an hour every night for reading that's not on my phone, or scheduling your workout like Tiffany does, or scheduling time for your relationships outside of work, and finding ways to really prioritize your own mental health, and then also give yourself those breaks that, unless you're intentional about them, won't come easily. So you kind of have to make it just as big of a priority to set yourself a time to go to the nail salon as it is to go pick up your kids from daycare. So I would just say prioritize yourself and don't feel bad about that. And then also just be really gentle to yourself. Be forgiving, know that you can't do it all, and that some days are going to be hard, and that that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Victoria? What would you say?
So I don't have kids or anything, but it seems like the theme that we're having here is self-care is the most important thing. And so what I've definitely realized this year is that we don't have control over a lot of things, but we have control over how we react. And so that taking that time for yourself, when's the last time you've been outside or, picked up a book for 15 minutes, just some kind of time for yourself. That way you can feed into other people. Like we saw with, getting burnout is real and it's okay. And you don't have to feel so much shame for it, because we're all human and we just need, again, patience with ourselves and with others.
Mm-hmm. Good word. I want to highlight what Sybil said in the chat about dead women don't pay bills, meaning you can't work yourself to the bone and take care of anyone else. That is one of the lessons I think I've learned in this season, is that I don't have to be a hero. And it was actually Tiffany and I hanging out, and she was like, "What's going on at home?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm homeschooling 2 kids." And she just literally stopped in her tracks and was like, "You can't do that." You're not going to be able to survive. And so 2 weeks later, my kids were back at school and that has created some freedom and some time for me, at least to have 45 minutes to an hour to myself, and take care of myself first so that I can show up for others. I appreciate you all joining us this afternoon, and thank you for the conversation about how to support women and people of color in the workplace, creating a sense of belonging. I hope you all picked up some nuggets and have the courage to implement some of these things that Mia and Tiffany and Victoria have brought up in this last hour. So with that, find something else to get plugged into during Startup Week. This is the best week of the year to me, a week of free professional development, and there's stuff from one end of the spectrum to the other. So hope to see you on another call soon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.